Imagine standing on a beach, you're looking out at the water, and then in exactly 7.5 minutes, which is less time than it takes to brew a decent cup of coffee, a 3-mile trench is violently ripped open right through the middle of the sea.
Right, not by magic.
Exactly, not by magic, not by some glowing staff, but by invisible counter-rotating whirlpools just tearing the water apart. So today, we are completely throwing out everything you have ever seen in Sunday school picture books.
Oh, absolutely.
And we are throwing out the Charlton Heston Hollywood blockbusters with those static, glowing blue walls of water. Because today, we aren't talking about miracles. We are talking about fluid dynamics.
Yeah, it really is a complete paradigm shift for how we view historical narratives. I mean, we are taking a text that has been viewed almost exclusively through a lens of mysticism and theology for millennia.
Right.
And we are submitting it to the exact same kind of rigorous, modern mathematical modeling that engineers use to design, like a massive hydroelectric dam.
Or to predict the storm surge of a Category 5 hurricane.
Right.
And that is the entire mission of this deep dive.
Yeah.
We are focusing completely on a fascinating scientific framework attributed to Dr. Khaled Waleed.
Yes, the submerged Leeson dual toroidal resonance model.
Let's just call it the SLDTR model because that is a mouthful.
Fair enough.
But what this model does is it takes the ancient texts, specifically the crossing of Moses and the Israelites fleeing the Pharaoh, and it attempts to prove that this event wasn't a suspension of physical laws.
Right. It was actually an incredibly precise, extreme convergence of natural geography and fluid mechanics.
And we have to be very clear on the geography right away, Dawn.
We do. Dr. Khaled Waleed's model places this crossing specifically at the Dead Sea. In the original textual sources, this body of water is referred to as YAM.
YAM, yeah.
Yeah. So we are completely moving away from the Red Sea or, the Gulf of Suez assumptions that you usually see in pop culture.
Totally.
The model calculates a very localized crossing from the western side, which is Palestine, over to the eastern side, which is Jordan.
Palestine to Jordan. Got it.
Right. It's a specific geographic theater that possesses the exact geometric requirements to make this entire mathematical equation possible.
Before we get into the actual math, and I promise you the math is mind-blowing, I do want to set a quick ground rule, a sort of philosophical boundary for this deep dive.
I think an impartiality disclaimer is absolutely crucial whenever you touch a subject like this.
Definitely.
We are not here today to debate theology. We are not here to endorse or dismantle any specific religious viewpoints. And we are absolutely not here to get into modern regional politics.
Right. Our mission today is purely to analyze the source material provided.
Exactly. We are looking at a strict, number-crunching geophysical and hydrodynamic model. It attempts to explain how such an event could theoretically occur according to the known unbreakable laws of physics.
We're looking at fluid velocity, atmospheric pressure, things like that.
Geological realities, yes.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because to understand Dr. Khaled Waleed's model, you can't just look at the water. I mean, water is just a fluid, right? It sits there until something acts on it.
That's right.
You have to look at the bathtub holding the water. We need to talk about the underlying geography of the Dead Sea itself because this entire model relies heavily on the specific shape of the seafloor there.
The shape of the seafloor, we call bathymetry, is the foundational key to everything that follows.
Bathymetry.
Yeah, bathymetry is just the underwater equivalent of topography. It's the hills, valleys, and ridges hidden beneath the surface. And the Dead Sea is not just a uniform, flat-bottomed bowl.
Right. If you drained it, it wouldn't look like a giant swimming pool.
Not at all. It is naturally divided into two distinct basins. You have a very deep northern basin and a much, much shallower southern basin.
And separating those two basins is this geological formation that basically acts as the star of the show today. It's called the Leeson.
Yes. Leeson translates roughly to the tongue, referring to its shape. From a geological perspective, the Leeson is what we classify as a diapiric salt uplift.
A diapiric salt uplift. I'm going to need you to translate that into plain English, because that sounds like a condition you need an incredibly expensive prescription for.
Fair enough, yeah. It's actually a fascinating geological process. Over millions of years, subterranean salt beds get buried under incredibly heavy layers of rock and sediment.
Okay.
Now, normally we think of salt as brittle crystals, like what you shake on your food. But when you put immense planetary scale pressure on massive deposits of salt, it stops acting like a brittle rock and starts acting plastically.
Plastically. Like it bends.
Almost like an incredibly slow-moving, highly viscous fluid. Think of silly putty.
Okay, so under millions of tons of rock, the salt gets squeezed.
Exactly. And because salt is less dense than the heavy rock pressing down on it, it wants to rise. It finds weaknesses in the Earth's crust and pushes its way upward over eons.
Wow.
Yeah, this creates a massive rising ridge or dome of salt on the seafloor. So you have this natural divider, this massive physical barrier, sitting right between the deep northern basin of the Dead Sea and the shallow southern basin.
But the model points out a massive historical detail here. If you travel to the Dead Sea today, the Lysan isn't underwater. It's a highly visible peninsula. You can stand on it.
Right, it's dry land today.
But for Dr. Khaled Waleed's model to work, the Lysan could not have been a peninsula. The geological history in the ancient texts specify that due to severe historical fluctuations in the water levels during the timeline of this crossing event, the Lysan was a submerged ridge.
That is a critical, non-negotiable distinction for the physics to work. The model specifies that the water flowing over this Lysan ridge was about 1.8 to 2.7 meters deep.
So that's roughly, what, 6 to 9 feet of water over the top of the ridge?
Yes. Meanwhile, the surrounding water in the basins on either side was much deeper. The water immediately adjacent to the ridge dropped down to anywhere from 7 to 12 meters deep.
So to someone standing on the shore looking out, you just see a continuous, unbroken body of water on the surface. But underneath, completely hidden from view, you have this massive submerged obstacle. So it's basically an invisible underwater speed bump, a really wide one, stretching all the way across the sea from Palestine to Jordan. But I have to stop you here, because I really need to push back on the fundamental premise.
Go ahead.
Or at least ask the question that I think anyone listening is probably screaming at their device right now.
I think I know where you're going with this.
If it's already an underwater speed bump, completely submerged under nearly 3 meters of water, how does it magically become a dry walking path without just pulling a giant drain plug and emptying the entire Dead Sea?
Right.
I mean, water seeks its own level. That is the most basic rule of liquid.
Yeah.
If you drop the water level over the ridge, the water from the deeper basins is just going to immediately rush in to fill the gap.
Which is exactly how fluids normally behave, yes.
If you lower the water in the middle of a bathtub, you lower the water everywhere. You can't just carve a hole in the surface of a pond.
And you have just perfectly articulated why the classic Hollywood walls of static water concept completely fails the physics test. It's impossible.
So how does this model solve that?
What you are describing, the reality that water seeks its own level, is exactly why Dr. Waleed's model is so revolutionary. You need a highly localized fluid dynamics phenomena.
Okay.
You need a mechanical engine that actively forces the water away only over the ridge while simultaneously holding back the millions of tons of water in the deeper basins.
How is that even possible?
It turns out that submerged Lysan Ridge is the exact geometrical prerequisite for something in fluid dynamics called shear amplification.
Shear amplification?
Yes. Having a submerged ridge sitting between two uneven basins turns the Dead Sea from a simple passive bathtub into a highly complex, aggressive hydraulic machine.
Okay, so the shape of it matters.
Hugely. The ridge acts as a bottleneck. It forces the fluid to behave in extreme ways when energy is applied to it.
Okay, I follow the bathtub part. We have the right environment. We have the deep end, the shallow end, and the submerged speed bump in the middle. But a bathtub, no matter how weirdly shaped, doesn't just start throwing water around on its own.
Obviously not.
You need an engine. Where is the kinetic energy coming from to actually push this water?
Precisely. You have the geometry, but you need an external force. And this leads us directly into the physics of the toroids, which is the absolute core of the SL-DTR framework.
And this is where we officially, permanently throw out the idea of static water walls.
Well, entirely.
Yeah.
Dr. Khaled Waleed explicitly rejects this. Static, vertical walls of standing water completely defy physics. Water cannot stack like Drex unless it's frozen solid into ice.
So what replaces the walls?
Instead, the model uses a concept called dynamic coherent structures.
Dynamic coherent structures. Break that down for me.
Let's break down what a dynamic coherent structure actually is. In fluid dynamics, fluids can be incredibly chaotic. Think of the swirling smoke from a campfire. It's random, unpredictable turbulence.
Right.
But sometimes, under the right forcing conditions, that chaos organizes itself into a persistent, highly structured pattern of flow. The most famous example in our solar system is the Great Red Spot on Jupiter.
Oh, the giant storm.
Exactly. That is a massive spinning storm of gas, which acts as a fluid that has maintained its structure for hundreds of years.
Okay.
It's chaotic fluid, but it's organized into a coherent structure. It holds its shape. The SLDTR model introduces the core engine of this sea crossing event. Two massive counter-rotating whirlpools, or what fluid dynamicists call toroidal vortices.
Toroidal, meaning shaped like a torus, like a donut. So we are talking about two giant spinning water donuts taking up massive portions of the Dead Sea.
That's a very good visual. You have the north toroidal cell, which spins in one specific direction in the deep basin.
Okay.
And then you have the south toroidal cell spinning in the shallow basin. But the key to the entire mathematical stability of this system is that it is spinning in the exact opposite direction. They are perfectly counter-rotating.
But water doesn't just spontaneously start spinning perfectly in opposite directions on its own. I don't care how uniquely shaped the seafloor is, what actually flips the switch on this machine?
Energy from the atmosphere.
What provides the energy?
The model calculates that this requires a massive, sustained northeastern wind stress. Wind blowing across the surface of the water.
Just wind.
But it can't just be a strong breeze. It has to hit a very specific mathematical threshold. In fluid mechanics, there's a concept called the Reynolds number. It's a way to predict how a fluid will flow based on velocity, density, and viscosity.
You don't need to give me the exact algebraic equation, but just give me a sense of the scale here.
The scale is immense. The wind stress has to push the water so hard that the flow reaches a critical Reynolds number well over 300,000.
Over 300,000.
Yes. When that massive amount of wind energy hits the hydraulic bottleneck of the submerged Leeson Ridge, the flow of the water separates.
Okay.
The underlying topography basically catches the energy and forces it into these two massive counter-rotating cells.
Yeah.
It creates a forced vortex pair.
Okay, wait. I'm trying to visualize how this actually helps anyone cross the sea.
Yeah.
Because spinning water usually throws things outward, right? That's centrifugal force. If I put my hand in a small pool of water and start vigorously spinning it in a circle, the water pushes up against the edges of the pool and the center gets shallower.
Yes, exactly.
How does spinning water in two totally different basins, separated by a ridge, create a dry, walkable path right in the middle where they meet?
That's the brilliance of the counter-rotation.
Let me try to work through an analogy. Let's say I am sitting at a table with 2 cups of coffee side by side.
Okay.
I take 2 spoons. I stir the cup on the left clockwise, really fast, and I stir the cup on the right counterclockwise, really fast. In both cups, the centrifugal force pushes the liquid to the ceramic walls, and the coffee dips down in the center of the spinning vortex.
Right, the funnel effect.
It forms a little tornado funnel in the middle of each cup. But the space between the cups is just the table. How does that help?
I see where you're going, but we have to adjust the analogy to match the actual physical reality of the Dead Sea. In your analogy, you have physical ceramic walls separating the 2 cups of coffee.
Right.
In the Dead Sea, there is no wall. The 2 spinning vortices are actually touching each other right over the submerged Leeson Ridge.
Oh.
Imagine you take away the ceramic walls of the cups, but somehow keep the liquid spinning. You have the left vortex spinning clockwise, and the right vortex spinning counterclockwise. Think about what happens right at the boundary where those 2 spinning circles touch.
Okay, let me think. If the left one is going clockwise, the edge of it, where it meets the right cup, is moving, say, up away from me.
Yes.
And if the right one is going counterclockwise, the edge of it where it meets the left cup is also moving up away from me.
Oh, wow.
They're moving in the exact same direction at the point of contact, like gears meshing.
Yes, that is exactly it. Because they are counter-rotating at the exact line where they meet over the submerged ridge, the water from both massive toroids is moving in the exact same direction at incredibly high speeds.
That's wild.
They aren't fighting each other, they are compounding each other's velocity.
So it creates this massive current right over the speed bump.
Fluid dynamicists call this a high shear zone. And this is where the actual physics of the crossing happens.
Okay, explain that.
Because the velocity of the water in this specific zone over the ridge is so extreme, it creates an intense dynamic pressure drop.
The pressure dropped.
Yeah. The centrifugal forces of these 2 massive toroids are essentially grabbing the water, sitting over the ridge, gripping it, and violently ripping it outward. It's displacing it away from the center line and piling it up into the wider, dipper parts of the northern and southern basins.
Wow. Okay. Conceptually, that makes a bizarre kind of sense, pulling water away with 2 giant cooperative whirlpools.
Right.
But here's where it gets really interesting for me, because having a theoretical model of 2 whirlpools is one thing. Actually looking at the engineering math required to see if this pressure drop is powerful enough to let thousands of humans walk across the Dead Sea from Palestine to Jordan is entirely different.
Oh, completely.
We have to look at the raw numbers.
And the numbers in Dr. Waleed's calculations are staggering. Let's unpack the exact dimensions of this crossing path. We are not talking about a narrow, slippery little footpath here.
What are we talking about?
According to the model, the length of the crossing spanning from the western shore of Palestine, entirely across the Lysan Ridge, to the eastern shore in Jordan is 4.6 kilometers.
That is 4,600 meters of exposed seabed. That's almost 3 miles long.
And the width of the crossing, the cleared corridor between the spinning water, the model calculates it at 250 meters wide.
250 meters.
Yes.
That is over 2.5 American football fields placed end to end. Just pure width.
It's massive.
That allows for a massive multi-lane crossing. You could have dozens of people walking shoulder to shoulder alongside livestock pulling carts. And the model mentions the slope of the seabed there, right?
Yes, the slope of the Lysan Ridge is less than 0.4%. It is, for all practical purposes, perfectly flat.
Which is a critical detail.
Right. If you are moving a massive civilian population, you can't have them scaling steep, slippery underwater ravines. It has to be flat.
But the real mathematical hurdle is the depth of the water you have to move. You said earlier the water over this ridge was initially up to 2.7 meters deep.
Yes, up to 9 feet.
To make it actually walkable, you can't just shave off the top layer of water. The model calculates something it calls a depth target, doesn't it?
Yes. The model mathematically dictates a required depth target of 3.0 meters. So the toroids must generate enough dynamic pressure drop to push away 3.0 meters of water depth across that entire 4.6 kilometer by 250 meter area.
Wait, if the water is only 2.7 meters deep, why do you need a pressure drop of 3.0 meters? You're dropping the pressure below the actual seafloor.
That extra 0.3 meters is a crucial safety margin. You have to remember what the seafloor is made of here.
The salt, right?
Exactly. This is a diapiric salt bed. It has been submerged under hypersaline water for years. If the wind and the toroids just barely clear the 2.7 meters of water, the ground underneath isn't dry.
It's just mud.
It's a saturated, slippery, muddy, completely unwalkable mess. You'd sink up to your knees in salty sludge.
Right. It would be a swamp.
But by generating a pressure drop equivalent to 3.0 meters, the localized atmosphere right over the seabed is deeply underpressurized.
Oh, I see.
This extreme dynamic pressure drop literally pulls the latent moisture straight out of the top layer of the salt bed. It effectively flash dries the surface. It turns a muddy swamp into a hard, walkable, crystallized salt crust almost instantly.
That is an incredible detail. But the sheer volume of water we were talking about displacing, let's just do the math on that.
It's a lot of water.
If you want to achieve a 3-meter drop over an area that is 4.6 kilometers long and 250 meters wide, that is an incomprehensible amount of mass to just push to the side.
When you multiply the length, the width, and that 3-meter depth target, the volume calculation dictates that the toroids have to displace 3.45 million cubic meters of water away from the Lysan Ridge.
3.45 million cubic meters. I really want to try and translate that scale for a minute.
Yeah.
Because human brains aren't built to understand numbers that big when it comes to liquid.
They really aren't.
1 single cubic meter of water is 1,000 liters. It weighs exactly 1 metric ton. So 3.45 million cubic meters is 3.45 million metric tons of water.
That's right.
If you picture a massive professional sports stadium, like a huge NFL stadium that seats 80,000 people, and you filled the entire thing to the very top row of the bleachers with water, that's maybe 1 million cubic meters.
Okay.
This model requires these 2 whirlpools to instantly empty out the equivalent of 3 or 4 of those mega stadiums, push all that heavy water to the sides, and just hold it there.
And the question is, how do they hold it there? This is where the model applies Bernoulli's principle.
I know Bernoulli's principle from aviation. It's how airplanes fly, right?
Exactly. In simplified terms, Bernoulli's principle states that an increase in the speed of a fluid occurs simultaneously with a decrease in static pressure. When an airplane flies, the wing is shaped so that the air moving over the curved top of the wing has to travel faster than the air moving underneath it. Because the air on top is moving faster, its pressure drops.
And the high pressure underneath pushes up.
Yes, seeking equilibrium, and that generates lift.
Okay, but we aren't trying to lift an airplane. We're trying to create a trench in the ocean.
The principle works in reverse. We're using extreme fluid velocity to create a massive downward depression, a localized trench of low pressure in the water.
So the speed pushes it down.
To create a 3.0 meter pressure drop purely through the velocity of the fluid, The water sweeping through that high shear zone where the two toroids meet must reach a critical velocity.
How fast does the water have to be moving to hold back 3.45 million tons of surrounding sea?
The model calculates this critical velocity at roughly 7.5 to 7.67 meters per second.
7.67 meters per second. Let's contextualize that because it doesn't sound that fast if you're thinking about a car.
Yeah.
That translates to about 27 kilometers per hour.
Right.
Which, if you are driving, is a slow school zone.
Oh.
But for a massive structural water current, 27 kilometers per hour is violently, terrifyingly fast.
Oh, beyond terrifying.
Have you ever been whitewater rafting? A really intense Class 5 rapid might hit 15 or 20 kilometers an hour, and it sounds like a jet engine, and it will tear a boat to pieces.
And this is faster than that.
This is 27 kilometers per hour. It means that the environment of this crossing, it wouldn't be this peaceful, silent, majestic walk between two walls of glass.
Not at all.
It would be an incredibly chaotic, deafeningly loud environment. You'd have localized hurricane-force winds whipping the salt spray into your eyes. Yeah. The roar of the water rushing past you on both sides would vibrate in your chest.
It would be an absolutely terrifying sensory experience. You are walking down a 250-meter wide corridor of dried salt.
Yeah.
And on your left and on your right, millions of tons of hypersaline water are violently sweeping past you in these massive, curved, churning arcs, held back entirely by the dynamic rotational pressure of their own speed.
A violent balancing act of physics. Which brings me to what I think is the most natural follow-up question. Yeah. And again, I'm approaching this with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Please do.
If you have to move 3.45 million cubic meters of heady hypersaline dead seawater, and you have to get that whole massive planetary scale system spinning up to 27 kilometers per hour, wouldn't that take days to accomplish?
That's the logical assumption.
I'm picturing an extreme tide. Like the wind starts blowing, and over the course of 48 hours, the water slowly recedes, millimeter by millimeter, until finally the mud is exposed.
That is a very common thought, and it is exactly where the mathematics of this model deliver one of their most shocking revelations.
Oh.
Dr. Waleed's calculations include the equation for the time it takes to actually open the path. This equation factors in the massive cross-sectional flow area of the displaced water, and it factors in that extreme critical velocity of 7.67 meters per second.
Okay, so area and speed.
Right. Because both the area of the flow and the velocity are so incredibly high, the time it takes to drain that corridor is shockingly short.
Okay, don't leave me hanging. What is the number? How long does it take to move 3.5 million tons of water out of the way?
The model proves that achieving the full, dry, walkable path doesn't take days, it doesn't take hours.
Wait, really?
From the exact moment the wind stress forces the energy over the required threshold and the two toroids lock into phase with each other, the path opens in exactly 7.2 to 7.5 minutes.
Wait. I'm sorry, 7.5 minutes, not days?
7.5 minutes.
How is it physically possible to move 3 million tons of water in the time it takes me to check my email? I mean, think about the visual of that.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
If you are Moses, or if you are just a panicked Israelite standing on the western shore in Palestine, looking out of the Dead Sea with an army at your back, you don't see a slow, natural shift in the tides.
No, you don't.
You don't set up camp and wait for 3 days. You see the water suddenly begin to boil and churn as the vortices form. And then, in less than 10 minutes, a 4.6-kilometer trench is violently ripped open in the sea, exposing the bottom of the ocean.
It would literally look like someone pulled a colossal drain plug out of the bottom of the sea. To the human eye, to anyone standing on that shore, it would appear instantly miraculous.
Absolutely.
It defies human intuition. But it is entirely strictly rooted in the mathematics of fluid mechanics. This rapid onset, this sudden violence, is a hallmark of dynamic, coherent structures.
Explain how that works, the suddenness of it.
When you have a massive physical system being forced by external energy, in this case, the extreme sustained wind stress, the system absorbs that energy. It absorbs it and absorbs it until it hits a critical threshold. And once that specific threshold is met, the phase shift is abrupt and almost instantaneous. The chaotic fluid snaps into its new organized structure.
It's like snapping a glow stick. Bend it, you apply pressure, and nothing happens, and then suddenly, crack, the glass vial inside breaks, and it instantly chemical reacts and glows.
That's a great analogy.
Or like taking a piece of glass and hitting it with a sound wave. It holds together perfectly until it hits the exact right resonant frequency, and then it shatters completely in a millisecond. It holds, and then, boom. Immediate phase shift.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it. And once it snaps into this dual toroidal resonance, it becomes a highly volatile but mathematically stable state.
Like a spinning top.
Exactly. When a top is spinning at high speed, it stands perfectly upright. It defies gravity through its angular momentum. It is stable.
Right.
As long as the wind stress remains constant, and as long as the kinetic energy keeps feeding those two toroids, those churning walls of spinning water will hold perfectly in place, holding back the sea.
Okay, so the path from Palestine to Jordan is open. It took 7.5 minutes to clear. The physical stage is completely set. We have a 4.6-kilometer dry corridor flanked by spinning, roaring water.
Yes, the stage is set.
But now we have to pivot. We have to introduce the human element to this mathematical model because you have two massive, exhausted, terrified groups of people about to interact with this geological anomaly.
Well, right, it's not just an empty landscape.
You have the Israelites and you have the pursuing Egyptian army. How does human behavior map onto this incredibly tight fluid dynamics timeline?
This is where Dr. Khaled Waleed's model becomes truly fascinating, because it moves from pure fluid mechanics into something closer to a tactical military analysis.
Oh, really?
Yes. The model provides an incredibly precise 92-minute timeline of the entire crossing event. And it does this by blending the fluid dynamics we just discussed with realistic human behavioral psychology, crowd dynamics, and standard human walking speeds.
Okay, so let's literally walk through this 92-minute clock. Let's start at minute 0. The path is just violently ripped open in 7.5 minutes. The toroids are spinning at 27 kilometers an hour. The salt bed is flash drying. What is happening on the shores?
At minute 0, we have what the model calls the standoff.
The standoff.
The two groups, Moses and the civilian Israelites on the western shore and Pharaoh's pursuing army coming up behind them, are separated by a very specific visual distance. The model calculates this distance at roughly 2.8 to 3.6 kilometers.
Why that specific distance? Why not right on top of them or 10 kilometers away?
Because we have to look at the topography of the land around the Dead Sea Basin. It is flat. A distance of roughly 3 kilometers across flat terrain allows for clear, undeniable visual confirmation.
Okay, so they can see each
See
other.
it very clearly. Pharaoh's army can see the massive crowd of Israelites trapped against the water, and the Israelites can clearly see the approaching dust clouds and the chariots of the Egyptian army.
Which induces immediate, profound psychological panic.
Precisely, which perfectly aligns with the historical textual narrative of the Israelites despairing on the shore. But, and this is tactically crucial, 3 kilometers provides enough physical distance for a delay. The army isn't right on their heels swinging swords. The Israelites have a buffer of perhaps 10 or 15 minutes before the vanguard of the army actually reaches the shoreline.
Right, they're in sight, they're terrifying, but they're momentarily out of striking distance. So that gives the Israelites a window.
A very tight window, but yes.
So at minute 5 on our clock, Moses' group steps onto the exposed salt bed and enters the corridor. The model calculates their movement using a standard human walking speed of 1.15 meters per second.
Yes,
Yeah.
1.15 meters per second. This is considered a very conservative walking speed in biomechanics.
But it makes perfect sense. You aren't talking about a group of Olympic sprinters running on a synthetic track. You are talking about a massive, panicked civilian population.
With everything they own.
Right. You have young children, you have the elderly, you have herds of livestock, you have heavy wooden carts filled with belongings, and they are walking on a salt bed that was literally underwater 10 minutes ago.
Even if it flash dried, it's uneven.
Yeah. And they are walking between two deafening, roaring, churning walls of water moving at 27 kilometers an hour. People are going to be terrified. They're going to freeze up. Animals are going to panic.
So 1.15 meters per second is probably highly realistic. The model accounts for all of that fiction. So taking that base speed of 1.15 meters per second and applying it to the massive 4.6 kilometer length of the crossing, and then factoring in a mathematical coefficient for crowd congestion, because thousands of people bottlenecking at the entrance and exit slows everything down, the model calculates the total safe crossing time for the entire Israelite population.
Oh, what's the total time?
It calculates that it takes 85 minutes.
So it takes 1 hour and 25 minutes from the moment the first Israelite steps onto the salt bed in Palestine to the moment the very last straggler steps off the seabed and safely onto the eastern shore in Jordan.
Correct.
But here's my question. What is the Egyptian army doing during this hour and a half? Why doesn't the greatest, most technologically advanced military force in the region just charge straight into the trench after them?
It's a great question.
They have horses, They have chariots. They could run down civilians moving at 1 meter a second in a matter of minutes.
This is genuinely one of my favorite details in the entire SLDTR framework because it introduces brilliant psychological and tactical realism into the math.
How so?
The model states that Pharaoh's army doesn't rush into the water immediately. When they reach the shore, they experience a tactical hesitation. And this hesitation lasts for about 35 to 40 minutes.
Which, if you really put yourself in the leather sandals of an Egyptian chariot commander, makes perfect sense.
Right.
You've been chasing these escaped laborers for days. You finally corner them at the edge of the Dead Sea, and suddenly the water violently rips itself apart into two deafening, spinning vortexes, exposing the bottom of the ocean.
Exactly.
You are a seasoned military commander. You aren't just going to blindly whip your horses into a churning abyss of unknown physics without thinking. You're going to pull back on the reins. You're going to stop your chariots on the beach. And you are going to watch.
Yes.
Let's use an analogy here, a really human one. It's like being the second person to cross a frozen lake in the middle of winter.
Okay, I like this.
You get to the edge of the lake,
Yeah.
and you see the ice.
Yeah.
You have absolutely no idea how thick it is.
Yeah.
You don't know if it will hold your weight. So what do? You let the first guy walk out there.
Right, you watch him.
You stand on the solid shore, and you watch him. You wait to see if the ice cracks. You watch the Israelites get a quarter of the way across, then halfway across. You see that they aren't drowning. You see that the water isn't collapsing on them. And so your brain assumes the ice is safe.
That is the exact psychological trap the model describes. The Egyptian military command observes this dry path holding completely steady for over half an hour. They're watching the Israelites successfully traverse it.
It looks stable.
They likely assume it is a rare but entirely stable natural phenomenon, perhaps an extreme tidal event or a seasonal wind pattern they can exploit.
So they finally move.
Their tactical hesitation finally ends. The fear of the unknown is overridden by the desire to capture their quarry. They commit the army. According to Dr. Waleed's timeline, Pharaoh's army enters the western side of the corridor in Palestine at minute 45.
Minute 45. Okay, let's map this physically. If the civilian Israelites take 85 minutes to completely cross, and the Egyptian vanguard enters the trench at minute 45, that means when the chariots hit the seabed, the Israelites are just passing the midpoint of the 4.6-kilometer trench.
Yes. They are over 2 kilometers ahead. The Egyptians have a massive gap to close.
So they're moving faster.
Much faster.
Yep.
With horses and chariots, they might be moving at 2.0 meters per second, or even faster despite the uneven terrain. They are rapidly eating up the distance.
But the real danger isn't the distance, is it?
No. The real danger to the Egyptian army isn't the distance. It isn't the Israelites. It's the ice in your frozen lake analogy.
Right.
Because in this case, the ice isn't a passive dead sheet of frozen water. It is an active, violently spinning hydraulic machine holding back 3.45 million tons of hypersaline water. And the power source keeping that machine running is about to get abruptly cut off.
So we're arriving at the climax of the model. Let's look at the timeline. We're at minute 85. The very last of Moses' group steps out of the corridor and safely onto the dry eastern shore in Jordan.
Safe.
The entire Israelite population has successfully cleared the 4.6 kilometers. Meanwhile, the Egyptian army is deep inside the trench. They are probably stretched out over kilometers racing to catch the stragglers.
Exactly.
The vanguard is probably getting tantalizingly close to the eastern shore, while the rear guard is still miles back. What happens to the machine?
At minute 88 on the timeline, 3 minutes after the last Israelite is safe, the system experiences what the model calls phase lock failure.
Phase lock failure. That sounds incredibly terminal, like an alarm going off in a submarine.
It is entirely terminal. Remember, this entire dual toroidal system has been held in a delicate, highly resonant balance by the intense, sustained northeastern wind stress.
Yeah.
At minute 88, the model dictates that the wind stress drops below the critical threshold required to maintain the Reynolds number.
The wind dies.
The wind dies down. And when the wind dies down, the aerodynamic engine that has been powering the toroids simply shuts off.
So the spoon stops stirring the coffee.
Yes, but the results are vastly different. When you stop stirring a cup of coffee, the liquid slowly spins down over a few seconds due to friction against the ceramic cup. It's gentle.
Because it's small.
But the scale of the system in the Dead Sea results in something catastrophic. You have to remember the incredible almost unfathomable amount of kinetic energy stored in the massive spinning mass of the north and south toroidal cells.
It's millions of tons moving at 27 kilometers an hour.
Exactly. When the wind drops, the angular velocity that was maintaining that high shear zone over the loosened ridge instantly decays. The centrifugal force that was holding the water back vanishes, and all of that massive stored potential and kinetic energy is released instantly. It doesn't slowly trickle back in.
Right. The bathtub doesn't just gently refill from the tap.
Not at all. It returns as a shockwave. In fluid dynamics, this event is called a tsunami bore.
A bore. What is that exactly?
We need to understand what a bore is. It is not like a normal surfing wave you see at the beach, which peaks, curls over, crashes, and then recedes back into the ocean.
Okay.
A bore is a massive, continuous vertical wall of highly turbulent water. It moves uniformly at incredibly high speeds. It represents a sudden, massive, permanent change in water depth. The water comes in and it stays.
And the model calculates the actual speed of this collapse, doesn't it?
It reveals terrifying math. The velocity of the collapsing water is calculated to be between 12 and 16 meters per second.
Okay, let me do the conversion for that because this is where the sheer violence of the physics takes over.
Yeah.
16 meters per second translates to almost 58 kilometers per hour.
Which is incredibly fast for water.
That is a towering wall of water moving at highway speeds. And we aren't talking about normal fresh water. The Dead Sea is famously dense. It's hypersaline. It is packed full of dissolved minerals and salt.
Oh, absolutely.
Normal seawater weighs about 1.02 kilograms per liter. Dead sea water weighs about 1.24 kilograms per liter. It is nearly 25% heavier than the ocean.
It's dead.
Getting hit by a wall of hypersaline dead sea water moving at 58 kilometers per hour isn't like getting hit by a wave at the beach. It is literally like being hit by a freight train made of liquid concrete. It would crush wood, snap bones, and obliterate anything in its path instantly.
The inundation is absolute and uncompromising. The model calculates that the entire 4.6-kilometer corridor is violently, completely flooded in just 3 to 5 minutes.
3 to 5 minutes.
This brings us to minute 92 of the timeline. Total catastrophic collapse. The ridge is completely submerged again.
But let me push back here one last time. Let's talk about human survival instincts.
Okay.
If you are an Egyptian soldier or a chariot driver in the middle of that trench, you feel the wind die down, you look up and you see these massive churning water walls starting to wobble. You see the tsunami bore forming in the distance. Couldn't you just turn around and run?
Run forward, yeah.
Right, toward the Jordan side? You have 3 to 5 minutes before the water fully closes. Humans can sprint when their lives depend on it.
It's a natural question, but we have to connect the human biology to the environmental reality. Let's look at the brutal reality of the math.
Okay.
You are an Egyptian soldier. You are wearing heavy armor. You are carrying weapons, shields, supplies.
Yeah.
You are standing on a muddy, salt-flat terrain that has just been churned up and trampled by thousands of people, carts, and livestock walking over it right ahead of you. The ground is a rutted, uneven mess.
Right. It's not a paved road.
The absolute fastest human beings on Earth, Olympic sprinters, running on a perfectly flat, dry, highly engineered synthetic track, wearing lightweight spikes, peak at about 44 kilometers per hour. And they can only hold that speed for a few seconds.
Oh, 44 kilometers an hour.
The tsunami bore is a vertical wall of heavy water moving at up to 58 kilometers per hour continuously from both sides simultaneously.
Oh, man.
A human being running on muddy salt flats and armor cannot outrun 58 kilometers per hour. A galloping horse on unstable footing cannot outrun it. The chariots, whose narrow wooden wheels are likely bogged down deep in the damp salt crust, are completely immobile. They are trapped.
So they're just stuck.
The model proves mathematically that survival is impossible. It is a total, inescapable physical envelopment. There is no biological way to outpace the fluid dynamics.
It is just a total immediate wipeout. In the span of maybe 4 minutes, 3.45 million cubic meters of liquid concrete crash back together over the Lysan Ridge.
Exactly.
The spinning toroids instantly collapse into chaotic, boiling turbulence. The ridge is violently submerged under 2.7 meters of water once again. And then the energy dissipates, the water settles, and the Dead Sea returns to being a placid, hypersaline, incredibly still lake, just like it was an hour and a half earlier.
The physical evidence of the path is erased instantly, swallowed completely back into the bathymetry of the basin. The only thing left behind is the mathematical certainty that, given the exact right initial conditions, the event was entirely physically possible.
And I think that brings us to the ultimate summary of this incredible journey we've taken today. Dr. Khaled Waleed's submerged Leeson dual toroidal resonance model.
Yeah.
It takes one of the most famous ancient narratives in the world, a crossing from Palestine to Jordan, and it completely strips away the physically impossible magic. It throws out the static, glass-like water walls. It throws out the wizardry.
And it replaces that folklore with something far more profound, in my opinion. It replaces it with a terrifyingly precise 92-minute geophysical machine.
Which is amazing.
It shows how the natural hidden bathymetry of the Dead Sea, the deep North Basin, the shallow South Basin, and that critical submerged Leeson Ridge could act as a perfect hydraulic bottleneck. It proves mathematically how an extreme wind stress could generate two massive counter-rotating toroids,
Which displaced the water.
It shows how the centrifugal force of those toroids created a high shear zone that actively displaced 3.45 million cubic meters of heavy salt water in just 7.5 minutes. It provided a 4.6-kilometer dry path that remained stable for exactly 85 minutes, allowing a civilian population to cross.
Yeah.
And then it details the catastrophic phase lock failure that unleashed a 58-kilometer-per-hour tsunami bore, obliterating a pursuing army in under 5 minutes.
Which is just staggering to visualize. The sheer scale of the math is terrifying.
It really is. And for you listening, I think this exercise shows the immense, often untapped value of applying hard, multidisciplinary science to ancient historical texts.
Exactly.
Subjecting these narratives to computational fluid dynamics doesn't strip the awe away from the story. It doesn't ruin the magic. If anything, the exactness of the math, the realization of the sheer violent power of the fluid dynamics required to make this happen, it makes the event infinitely more awe-inspiring and terrifying than a simple fairy tale ever could be.
It grounds the awe in reality. Knowing that the planet is capable of generating an engine like that is far more intimidating than thinking it was just a localized magic trick. Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive.
I'm interested to hear this.
If an event of this massive continent-shifting scale, an event that violently displaced millions of tons of ocean in a matter of minutes, can be perfectly mathematically modeled as a rare, extreme convergence of natural geography and toroidal fluid dynamics right there at the Dead Sea.
Right.
How many other mythological landscape changes are out there? How many other ancient miracles or catastrophic floods or parting rivers that we've smugly dismissed as mere fables and campfire stories are just waiting for the right computational fluid dynamics engineer to plug them into a simulator?
The fascinating question.
How many myths are waiting to be proven physically possible all along? Think about that the next time you look at an ancient history book. Until next time.